Hey there guys, it's Metro, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Atal'Dazar dungeon in the Battle for Azeroth Alpha. Currently a pretty early build here, currently mid-March, so I assume some things will change over the course of the time, but the reason we're making this video is because even if they do change, I am very impressed with where the dungeons are at currently on the Alpha. And not only just like the iterations and the designs of the dungeon, or more like the implementation of the dungeon, but I'm actually really impressed with the actual design of the dungeon, the mechanical interactions of the dungeon. And you're going to see a lot of it very early. But the reason the idea sparked for this video was basically thinking about Mythic Plus moving forward. And now you're going to, most of what I'm impressed by is the trash, honestly. And you're going to see this immediately. That first mob was pretty interesting. It was a solo pull. Had like a little totem next to it, and the totem basically when it dies it makes it like properly killable, but it changes the mechanic of the trash. Now these skeletal guys with the big swords, they put down a 90% reduction, and they do it pretty frequently. Now when I did this on my death knight, I could not actually grip the mobs to prevent them from casting it. Like I would grip them, but they would still be channeling it, which may be a bug, but it was quite unique. Obviously, like gripping them away from the mob was pretty interesting, so that's a good idea. But in general, if they, you really can't pull those. Like, you're going to see this on this larger pack here. We have to kill the totem to be able to kill the big guy. And while that's happening, the skeleton is putting down the absorb, like the reduction. So you really got to be very economical with your stuns or your, preventions in one way or the other to make these casts not really slow down the pack. And I immediately was impressed by this. When I saw this, I came in here, I actually tried soloing the dungeon, didn't work out. But I came in here, learned about this side of the trash, and I was like, yo, this is actually really unique and very interesting. And I think this is one of the best things that they could do for trash in Mythic Plus. Not necessarily make the trash one-shot you, but make it considerably slower if you make mistakes. And that is really refreshing. I think that is really cool. And there's also the stealth mob. A stealth mob just pops out. Not in love with stealth mobs, especially if there's no real way to find them. I mean, I think Hunter Flare still works, but yeah, otherwise, I don't think there's actually any way to find them, right? Either way, you're going to see a really interesting pull yet again. 2 shielders. The caster is kind of your weakest link on the trash, the one that does the least. It does put like a big green circle out as you see it there. It doesn't really do much. At least, again, this is on normal. Things might change for Mythic, even Mythic 0. Things might change. I don't know exactly how things are going to go on Heroic. I assume there'll be dedicated Heroic and then Mythic testing. And then eventually Mythic Plus testing. There's so many difficulties. That's one thing that I would say I would like to not see in the game anymore. Just take out Heroic. I don't see why it's even still there. Anybody at 110 should just, or 120 now, should just be able to form a group for Mythic 0. It's not like it's that much harder. It's just inflating the item level to the point it's just kind of pointless. But anyway, yeah, so as you see, I mean, we carved through that pack, obviously, but this is normal. But yeah, so I'm using stun there. I want to make sure, as much of the time that we have on this pack is not wasted because of these absorbs. And this makes some really interesting interactions, I think. I think you're going to see some really, especially teaming weeks, especially weeks where, you're going to have a trash focused. Any week maybe where there's explosive too, I don't know. Who knows? By the time this is out, they'll probably have all new affixes and things will be entirely different. But regardless, any type of trash focus affix is going to make this dungeon very interesting. I'm really interested in seeing how this dungeon alone plays out. And the reason that I'm so compelled to make this video is because it's actually the first dungeon that they actually showed off. It was like one of the 2 that they showed off at the BlizzCon alpha preview thingy. And it has some of the most unique stuff in it like I've ever seen entirely. And in the entire circuits of dungeons from all the way back to Classic to today. Obviously things have gotten a lot more competitive with dungeons after Challenge Modes Edition and MOP and then into WoD. Now refined into Mythic Plus. Frankly, I think it's the best system the game ever implemented, and I want to see it succeed. So really, the point here is, discussing what this dungeon, based on normal, of course, we're just speculating because we've not actually even got access to Mythic, let alone Mythic Plus. But we're just speculating what this place might look like on Mythic Plus. And I think it's important to examine the trash when you're doing that. The bosses, whatever, they can be tough. I think this boss is probably going to be the hardest boss in here. But in terms of bosses, another really unique thing is that you can actually choose any of the 3 that you want to go to first. Now, I think that is a really, really, really good idea for Mythic Plus. I'm not necessarily, like, I don't think you need it in every dungeon, and it's certainly not going to be that way in every dungeon. But for the 3 dungeons that are out, 2 of them do have some optional, like, you can skip a boss or 2 if you want. So it's really cool. I mean, obviously you can't skip them permanently, but I mean, you can go to them in different orders. Now, this boss is really, I think it's quite interesting, and I think, again, on Tyrannical, it's going to be really tough, because you have to effectively kill 3 things before you could really damage the boss. He's going to constantly heal, just like the trash. These purple totems are going to make him very, pretty much immune to damage. He is going to take damage, but he's going to heal it up very quickly. And then as soon as you kill it, he kind of like starts falling apart and just kind of like hemorrhaging this green sludge all over the place. So of course we lust for this, and yeah, it does do a lot of damage. Now, I did this on my Blood DK on live stream, and it was really difficult to survive. But then again, I don't know. So I made it Resto Shaman. I don't normally heal without add-ons, so this was kind of difficult. You're going to see me really stumble a lot here, but one way or the other, I mean, we kill the boss easily. I think Warrior's probably in a good mitigation element. Blood DK is probably still better in actual, you know, overall health pool. But yeah, in general, Warrior's probably the best mitigator. And frankly, I think I'm a little bit better healer than a lot of the people on the alpha. The people I've played with on the alpha, I'm a little worried about them. Let's put it that way. But regardless, there's very few people on the alpha. Funny little story here. I actually did a /who on the alpha last night. It was like pretty late. It was like around midnight Eastern. Which, I mean, it's not that late, right? But it's for the alpha, it's kind of late. And there was 27 people online. 27 people online. So that's kind of scary. So that probably means there's less than 1,000 people who have been invited to this so far. And yeah, really never going to see more than a couple hundred on it at any one point in time. Now, it's very early. It's really only the second major wave of invites, if you ask me. Lucky enough to get in with that early wave. Very, very nice. Man, look at the scenery, though. Oh, it just makes me ache, dude. I don't even want to go back to Ma Souls. You know what I mean? I just love this. It's so good. But anyway, yeah, so that boss, you know, it's optional. We could have went to a different boss first, and I think that's really the take-home message here, that they've learned a lot of lessons about Mythic Plus. Not only about, like, the design of Mythic Plus, which we'll talk about in a second, but the actual, you know, the way people can approach Mythic Plus to try to benefit their comp a little better. And, of course, you know, when you have multiple comps, for some reason, maybe you want to go to a different boss first. Maybe it's easier. I don't know. I haven't really thought this through. But there's a lot of stuff in this dungeon that is very unique and I think really represents their mindset going forward. Now, here you're going to actually see, in my opinion, the coolest interaction between any trash mobs I've ever seen in my entire life. There may be one that is even cooler, but I don't think it exists, at least not currently. So, one of the mobs, I think it's the one on the left there. I can't see the names because it's so small, but anyway, one of the mobs is a melee mob. That's the one in the middle. He's going to charge around. I think that, yeah, the right mob is the fire caster, and the one on the left puts up that absorb, okay? So, the one on the left puts up an absorb, makes them immune to CC. The one on the right channels a flame enchantment for the melee guy, and then the melee guy goes spinning around in circles, launching fire. Now, the 3 of them together make it impossible to prevent this. If they all do their mechanics at the same time, the guy goes spinning, he gets the fire enchant, and the guy puts up the CC disruption, you cannot prevent the mechanic. But if you simply interrupt any of the 3, if you prevent any of the 3 from doing anything, then they cannot do that mechanic. That mechanic is unbelievably lethal. I mean, if you get hit by multiple ticks of it, you're dead, and this is only normal. So I can't even fathom what this pack is going to be like on any fortified week. But there you see it. Actually, 2 absorbs that time. Flamecaster is enchanting the melee guy, and he is throwing all kinds of fire out, and we're getting our ass kicked. Now, I have to tell you, I think that is the coolest interaction I've ever seen. But then there's this statue. All the while, you're fighting the regular guys trying to deal with their mechanics, and this statue is siphoning the life of your party members. And every time he does it, he actually gets stronger and stronger. I believe that's how it's worked. I'm not really sure. We did this without a healer yesterday on live stream, and I think that's how it worked. But anyway, so this is some really intricate trash. And the coolest part about this dungeon is, like, now we're on a live side of the dungeon, basically. Like, the other side was, like, dead stuff. Now we're on the live side. These trolls are trying to hold out against the dead. Kind of throws you back to the old Stratholme days. Kind of interesting. But here you'll see just 2 mobs. So there's no CC barrier thing. So we could actually just freely interrupt. But you know, people don't know that. They don't understand that the 3 mobs are the ones that are combining to make this pack so unique and so interesting. And really, that's this set of trash here is the reason I'm making this video. I cannot say, I really can't express to you how impressed I am by Blizzard. I mean, it's 14 years ago, right, that they probably would have made some of the dungeon, like the sets of the sets of mechanics for the dungeons that were in Classic WoW, right? Maybe 15 years, I don't know how long. But within 15 years, they've managed to continually come up with unique mechanics, unique dungeons, unique bosses, unique environments, and I can't say enough about how impressive that is. Call me a fanboy, whatever you want, but I love the game. I don't know what to tell you. It's just too good, and they continue to impress me. So, yeah, somebody said it. I think it was Fibonacci said it the other day. He's like, man, 13 years of WoW, and you're still impressed by an alpha, right? It's like, god damn, man. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying, dude. Like, they always impress me every time. So, yeah, anyway, you see this mob draining the health of that warlock there. But I don't know. It's not really a big deal. We have a very good damage group, I guess. I don't know. I wanted to log this, but I didn't. In the future, if we do dungeon videos, which we will, I'm going to try to remember to log it. It's a bit complicated because you have to upload the log. And if you upload the log, like if you don't like parse the log properly, then there's going to be like dozens of random trash. I don't know. I don't want all that. I just want like a proper dungeon log. So it's a bit of maintenance. But anyway, yeah, so we're almost at the top here of this area. We're going to be fighting the next boss. And again, this whole side, basically this fourth of the dungeon, probably my favorite element of any dungeon that's ever existed in WoW. Again, we have, here, there you see it. I actually interrupt that. He did the fiery enchantment, and the melee guy was like, let's rock him, sock him. And before he even does, I interrupted the fiery enchantment, so he cannot do it. So that is going to be very important. Like I said, I really can't speak about that enough. It's really interesting. I think you'll see it again here coming up. It's another really big pull in front of the boss. But I mean, we're talking about like 6 or 7 mobs in front of this boss here, guys. I mean, this is a lot of trash, even in normal, right? So I don't know. I don't know how you're gonna deal with this in fortified. With like, look at that. What's there? 7 mobs? There might be more. Yeah, I think it's 6 or 7. I don't know. I can't really tell because I'm looking all around. But anyway, there's I think 2 melee guys. I don't know. There's so many different types of mobs. I definitely see at least 1 fire guy. He just hit me with the lava bolt. So yeah, there he is. There. I'm gonna try to interrupt that guy. I think I failed. I can't remember. Oh, there it is. Yeah, there we go. So we got him interrupted. Very good. So we got like 1 tick of the fiery enchantment thingy out, and I just popped down a CD and make sure we're surviving it. But anyway, yeah, I can't say enough about it, man. The trash is actually really engaging. Obviously, not every dungeon is gonna be like Seat. But the main reason, thought about this topic, and the main reason I wanted to make this video was to now talk about what Mythic Plus is probably going to be like, okay? And me and a few people have discussed this over the last few weeks, but I'm pretty confident in saying that Mythic Plus is going to be significantly more complicated than it is in Legion. And the reason I'm going to say that is because if you look at dungeons like Neltharian's Lair, maybe Darkheart Thicket, for the most part, they have pretty much like 1 major thing that might hold you up in the entire dungeon. There's going to be, like the Pelters are kind of complicated. Maybe the last boss in DHT is kind of complicated on Tyrannical weeks. Stuff like that. They're well-made dungeons. Comparing them to the Burning Crusade Wrath, hugely beneficial. A lot of big changes to the game over the time, and the dungeons have benefited from that. But comparing them to their own expansions equivalents, like even Cathedral of Eternal Night, but mostly Seat of the Triumvirate, I think Seat is the one to really examine, because Seat is the newest dungeon made. It was made halfway through Legion, and you have to believe that they were already working on BFA when they made Seat. So I don't know exactly how this process goes. One thing that I have to say before we talk any more about that, this is the Hakar mechanic. You have to pick up the blood. Now, she heals. If 5 people don't have it, she heals very, very quickly. It might go all the way to full. But yeah, a lot of people in these groups that I've done, they simply don't know about this mechanic, and they don't pick it up. And it doesn't really heal her that much. But I'd imagine on Mythic and like higher Mythic Plus and stuff, it would presumably heal her very, very rapidly. I can't imagine what this fight is going to look like on that. It does have a spell stealable buff. I talked about this in the DK video I released the other day, but yeah, a spell stealable buff that can be taken by Thoughtseize as a blood DK. There, as you see, one of 2 only who have it, and she still doesn't heal up very much. But anyway, very cool mechanic. Hakar, like I said, basically the entire boss fight was that mechanic in Classic, and now it's just a single dungeon boss. But anyway, so yeah, talk about Mythic Plus. we're talking about the gradual creep of difficulty going up. I think you really can refer to it as that, because every dungeon they want to make more and more unique, more and more complicated, and it's gotten to the point now within just a single like 2-year lifespan where we have like dungeons and bosses and trash that are pretty much like 100% hard. Like can compare Seat's trash to any other dungeon in the game, right? It's just not comparable. It really isn't. You can't even compare it. It's just that much more complicated. So I think that's what we're going to see. I really do. Banana said it the best, actually. He said he thinks BFA, the beginning of BFA, is going to be an absolute nightmare for casuals. And I can't disagree with that. I mean, based on Legions, the beginning of Legion, if you guys didn't play it, was probably the most hardcore WoW experience I've ever had in my entire life. I've never had a game punish you for not playing as often as you could more than this version of WoW. Now, that really changed over time, but I cite that as one of the main reasons that I think they're trying to like have a big swing on philosophy. I don't know if they swung on their own philosophy within Legion simply because they thought it was time to nerf the things that they nerfed, or if because they didn't agree with how it ended up working. But the beginning of Legion, basically, you had to grind AP. Like, I mean, the AP benefits that you could be getting were massive. I'm talking about massive. Getting those traits was so important for raiding. Like, if there was a way you could have all the traits in the beginning of Emerald Nightmare, you would have easily doubled your DPS. It was insane. Some of the traits were so good, and some of them were, like, you know, locked behind really bad ones. So you really were encouraged to grind. Mythic Plus was way more difficult, but it did give a lot more loot. But yeah, it was mostly because people were the 3-chest thing. People were like targeting lower keys and 3-chesting it, quote unquote, 3-chesting. If you weren't around for that, it basically meant that you would get 3 chances at loot instead of just 1 like you do now. That changed in 7.2, I think. Maybe it was 7.1.1 or 7.1.5 or something. I don't know, but anyway, you know, the game's been refined a lot, and that was also complicated by consumables. Consumables were like extremely rare. Herbs were extremely rare. It was really difficult to get. Flasks made. Everything, like the flasks required like hundreds of herbs. It was crazy. So yeah, anyway, it was hardcore. Let's put it that way. And I expect the same thing to happen again in Battle for Azeroth. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. I think they're really thinking about that heavily. One thing I would love to see is a little bit more time before raids come out then, if they do end up doing that. I think that the situation that we saw in Emerald Nightmare was only exacerbated by the fact that we only really had 2 weeks to prepare for it, and nobody really knew it was coming. You know, nobody really knew that the first raid was going to be walled off by so many consumable problems, so many individual, like you're going to have to get, you know, the legendaries without any legendaries. You were considerably weaker, all that. So the systems worked great. And I expect to see, you know, refinements to those systems in Battle for Azeroth. But the one thing I would definitely expect to see actually go the other direction there, less refinement, more complication, more difficulty, is, of course, Mythic Plus dungeons. And I think you're going to see in this current MDI, I have a feeling that current MDI is going to show something very interesting. I don't know what, but I can see, because last time they did this thing where they put 3 affixes that couldn't have been together as an MDI comp, like a MDI composition of affixes. I get picked up by this. I'm not really sure how this mechanic is supposed to work, but anyway, you could actually cast while, I didn't even realize I could cast while I was in there. But there's also the fear on the boss. Tremor totem's back for Resto Shaman. I think it's for all Shaman though. So you could actually drop Tremor and just prevent the fear. Really cool. I'm glad that stuff like that's back. And that's why I think, again, that Mythic Plus is going to get more complicated. Giving Blood DK is a spell steal. Giving Shamans Tremor Totem, you know. What do they need Tremor Totem? If there's not going to be fears in the game, why do they need Tremor Totem, you know? So that's what it makes me think, like, we're going to see a lot more things that need to be interrupted, a lot more things that need to be prevented in some way. Maybe gripped, stunned, AoE, you know, whatever you got, AoE stuns. Damage is going to be, of course, more of a big deal on some. I mean, like, you could already tell on this boss. I don't know. These skeletons kind of just spawn, I guess, randomly. It's supposed to be like if you run over when they spawn, but like the more skeletons that are out, the worse this boss gets. It gets really messy. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm actually a little fearful. I mean, after what I've seen with Blood DK, you know, currently the situation where I can pretty much solo a 15. I mean, I could easily solo a 15 as long as it's the right affixes. And then we're losing Umbilicus, we're losing all this, you know, kind of like passive self-sustain. I don't know what the new gear stuff is going to look like. Obviously, it's probably going to help, again, make up for that difference. But the fact that, you know, we're losing a lot of that stuff, it really scares me out of the gate. This will be the first expansion I'm ever going to start with a tank and gear a tank up from scratch. And I think I play Blood DK pretty well. So if it's the same way it is now, I think the gear won't matter too much. But a lot of what you guys see when I live stream Mythic Pluses is me over gearing the content I'm doing. Frankly, you know, at 7 whatever, or a 970 plus is what I meant to say, doing like a 20 is really not that difficult. Like, it might seem like it's difficult for a lot of people, but the difference between 950 and 970 is absolutely massive. If it's not just for health pool, like really health pool is the main problem. And I think you're going to see a lot of that. Now maybe you're going to see less of the one-shot mechanics in Mythic Plus this time around, but I definitely could feel like already, like some of these dungeons, you know, the quicker we burn through these packs, yeah, the less the mechanics matter. And again, with the trash that we just showed, if you just burn through it, like we did in this dungeon. When I did this yesterday on my DK, we had really bad damage. Damage was really low. And we were seeing all of these mechanics multiple times. And I had to, we didn't have a healer at the time, so it was a little skewed. But I had to constantly grip, I had kite, I had to do all this stuff. But in this dungeon, we're just flying through it. Of course, as a healer, I'm sitting here doing actual damage that doesn't hurt, obviously. And you're going to have to get that. You're going to have to get into that mindset if you're a healer. If you're a tank, you have to really push yourself. You know, even in Legion, you have to do it. But I assume in BFA, it's going to be a lot worse. But one way or the other, here's a really good example of what I was thinking, like why I'm thinking that things are going to get more complicated. This is effectively a mini boss fight. And, you know, we see a couple of those in BFA, or in Legion, I mean. You see one well, there's like kind of like 1 or 2, depending. There's actually more than 1 or 2, really. I mean, but the main one is Vault of the Wardens. There's like multiple mini bosses throughout the dungeon, and then Cathedral of Eternal Night, multiple mini bosses throughout the dungeon. And those mini bosses can actually be the hardest part of the dungeon. So the fact that they included it in Cathedral again kind of makes me think that those are here to stay, right? We already see one in this dungeon. Didn't really see one in the other 2, to my knowledge. I don't think we saw one. There's kind of like a weird situation in the prison dungeon, but wouldn't really call it a mini boss. Yeah, so either way, this is definitely like a mini boss type mechanic. Now, one thing that I would say is the layout of this dungeon is actually pretty peculiar. And I was thinking, is it actually possible to skip this pack? Now, I don't think it is, because it seems like when it dies, the stairway opens to the final boss. But I'm not sure if it's the boss, that mini boss dying, or our proximity to it. I'm not sure. But I think it's probably all 3 bosses being dead, plus the mini boss being dead, then you could go up these stairs. I'm not really sure. But there's definitely some very strange, like the way the upper tier of the dungeon works. It makes me think that if we had like gliders and stuff on, we might actually be able to get to certain parts of the dungeon without even going by some of the trash. Now, I don't know if that's possible. I've yet to try it. I might come in here as Vengeance and kind of mess around a bit. But yeah, anyway, I think it might actually be possible. So anyway, some other problems with dungeons right now, you're going to see Tank's he's got a log off or whatever, just because his mouse is gone, I believe. I assume that's why he's logged off. But yeah, so that's a problem with dungeons. Had some problems with visual glitches. Fix those. So for the most part, I'd say things are in a great state. And like I said, the main reason I'm making this video is not because like the polish on the dungeon or whatever. It's just because the mechanical acuity of this dungeon is really advanced, if you ask me. And this boss is a really good example of it. Now, this one I think is going to be really complicated on Mythic Plus. I can only imagine, especially if they add another mechanic. But there's basically... There's really 2 real mechanics. I'm not exactly sure some of the other stuff that happens, but one of the mechanics that she does, she targets a player with this thing, and when it expires, well, it's kind of like you can't interact with it. You can't dispel it or anything like that. I'm not sure if you could immune it. I wonder if you were a paladin and it targeted you and you immuned, what would happen. But it spawns an ad. It's kind of similar like the ads in Maw of Souls' second boss. The longer they're alive, the worse it gets in that dungeon. But in this one, you have to actually prevent the mob from reaching the boss. If it does, you die. And I think this was in a troll dungeon in the past. I can't actually remember. But anyway, if the boss hits one of these ads, she puts up this permanent, massive like damage, AoE damage to the whole group. And then there's something dispellable. Not exactly sure where that comes from. There's something you could actually interrupt on the boss too. Not sure if we're interrupting. But the second main mechanic is these purple spider things. They're kind of like clear spiders, and they seem to interact in the way that if you accidentally walk into them, they like permanently put this purple puddle. That's a lot of P's. Permanently put this purple puddle on the perfectly placed price for that. Anyway, yeah, so this is pretty difficult to avoid, to be honest, especially as a healer. You know, not a Resto Truth, let's put it that way. I could definitely play Resto Shaman better, but I'm struggling. I'm struggling to do this towards the end of the dungeon, towards the end of the encounter. We're going to wipe on this one, and it's not going to be because of this purple mechanic, but it is going to be because of the ad. So here's, yeah, it's the ad is on somebody who doesn't understand the encounter. They're standing way too close. We don't have any grips or knockbacks, or, well, we have an Ellie Shaman, but I guess he doesn't know how to play his class. But anyway, the tank moves the boss closer because he thinks he has to damage it. So yeah, that's that. We're gonna wipe now. People are taking an insurmountable amount of damage, and this is just on normal. So obviously, if you make this mistake on Mythic Plus, you're done now, Skitty Pop. You know what I'm saying? And that is that. I mean, I don't even need to try to get this mechanic out because it's over. Maybe if I was properly set up to heal, a real healer might have been able to heal through that. But realistically, I have no hope of healing through that on this character. I don't know really anything about Resto Shaman. I mean, I know a little bit, but I don't know enough about the actual class to play it well enough to survive something like that. And I certainly am not keybound or set up properly for that. But the fact that we just wiped in a normal to a mechanic is really good. I think that's really telling. And again, I think that really confirms what I've been saying here. These fights are going to be a lot harder on Mythic Plus. You know, the whole dungeon element is going to be a lot harder on Mythic Plus than what we're used to. I have to say, I don't think they like watching people do 28s. I really don't think that. I think they're not satisfied watching people do keys that high, that easily, that quickly, actually upgrading a 28, you know what I mean? I think they look at that and they think, man, we fucked up. Because when it was first discussed, this whole Mythic Plus system was being discussed in Hazakosis, somebody said, so what are you going to do if somebody does, like, I can't remember what the number was, but it was like an astronomical number at the time. Maybe now it wouldn't seem astronomical. It might have only even been like plus 50, which, I mean, obviously that's never going to happen, but it's not that far off, right? Like, you're really not that far off. If they didn't constantly reset the difficulty of the dungeon, people would definitely be doing 50s at this expansion. And Ian was like, well, if somebody ever does a plus 50, we're going to ban them for hacking. That was his response. And it was like real quick, like sharp, like he had thought about this before. So the fact that that was said so sharply makes me think that they're like, no, you should not be going over 15 kind of thing, you know? And currently with the game, the way the game is, I think they're just like, all right, it's a design problem. It's not necessarily a numbers problem. So they let people, 15 is the highest for the gear, and then they let people go like easily over 20, 25, 26, 27, 28, because it's like, well, you're probably not going to be able to survive the mechanics. They don't function properly. You're not meant to be that high, so good luck. If you could do it, you can, right? And that's kind of the thing. It's like they tuned it in a way that the boss eventually one-shots you. So imagine this boss, right? The ad is literally going to have so much health that you won't be able to kill it in time. Like, you're going to have to constantly grip it or knock it back or something like that. That is going to be insane. This is going to be like a 10-minute fight if you have to do that for every one of these ads. So we both stun it. Not great play, obviously, but not great coordination. But here we go. We got lust up for this one, I think. Yeah, we used all 3 lusts on that one. We got a BM hunter and then 2 shamans. But anyway, yeah. So you're gonna see it here. A lot of purple stuff's gonna be on the ground. A lot of mechanics happening really at once. I mean, there's really only 2 mechanics that you're interacting with as each individual, but they are really punishing. Now, I was thinking about running down the stairs, but I think it probably would have reset. We had a couple of these reset on the previous times I did this dungeon. And this is definitely my favorite dungeon, but there's a lot of, yeah, I could see a lot of people accidentally resetting bosses because of the way you engage the boss. But, yeah, the rooms are adequate. I'd say they're big enough. That's some of the problems I have with some of the bosses in Karazhan. I feel like the room is really limited. I don't really like that, and obviously it's intentional, and a lot of the design is intentional, but so far these dungeons contain bosses that I feel you have enough room to handle the mechanics. But as you see here, I'm kind of just accidentally getting hit by these spiders, not really doing it on purpose, but I'm not really moving either, not really paying attention, and it's putting a lot of purple sludge on the ground. And here I think I get hit by another one. No, I actually dodged that one. But anyway, it gets to the point where pretty much the whole side of the room is just covered in this purple stuff, and there's a really bad one there. So again, the same guy gets targeted by this mechanic, and we do luckily kill it in time. But he is way too close for it. This tank is going to move the boss. I'm struggling with my keybinds, jumping into stuff. Oh boy, watch this. Spirit Link, big Link right there, boys. Hit him up with that Link. Nobody can die when Link's right. No, it's just not impossible. Oh shit, I have the mechanic. Maybe I should move. Maybe I should stand in that purple stuff and die. Very good work there, Metro. Anyway, But I'm really excited for the future of Mythic Plus. Hopefully you guys are too. If you have anything you want to contribute to this topic, let me know. I'm going to, again, just like the DK, the State of the DK thing, where State of Mythic Plus, we'll constantly iterate on this. Anytime new dungeons come out, new things that I want to talk about, we'll kind of make this an ongoing series for the rest of the test, the alpha into the beta. And then eventually it'll culminate into a time where we can actually test Mythic Plus. That'll be obviously the end goal here, is to actually do Mythic Plus on the beta. Whatever, like the test, you know, the private test there. So I don't know, I am really hyped up about this Battle for Azeroth alpha, guys. I've always loved WoW, but Legion is the time I've enjoyed the most. Mythic Plus is the system I've enjoyed the most, and Battle for Azeroth seems to be doing everything just a step better, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the future of it. So anyway, thanks for watching. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, see you guys in the next one.